Okay. Um, as I was talking about the wars, 1947 war, the 1967 war, the 1973 war, the 19, these three big wars have solidified Israel's claim to Palestine. It is now the state of Israel. It's no longer Palestine. Palestinians live there along with Jews, and the Jews, the Zionist Jews, are in charge, and that is legal. It may not be the way we want it to be. We want it to be more fair, more democratic, but that's not the way this thing went down. And the United States has nothing to do with that. Don't let anybody bait you or scare you or mortify you into taking a position that is based on a non-reality. Okay? It's not our problem. We could try to fix it and try to help, but we can't fix it. It's between the Palestinians and the Jews, and that war's been going on for thousands of years, and I don't think it's going to end in this particular latest confrontation, but it will change a lot of things. So Israel does has a right to exist. It is recognized by the United Nations, but the Palestinians do not recognize Israel. They don't recognize Israel, and they're not going to. And that's an act of war in a sense. That's stating you're an enemy. You're an occupier. You're occupying our land illegally. And that's the way they want to take it, and that's their position. They're going to fight for the rest of their lives, if need be, and into other generations, to fight for their land. And that's something we can appreciate, and we can certainly understand. Being Americans, we've been through the same thing, similar problems we had with British in our revolution. But we have that saying that Sean Hannity wrote the book "Live Free or Die." And that's certainly something that you can apply to the Palestinians, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way I see it. So the way it is now, Israel's there, it's real. Now the question is, do they have the right to defend themselves? Yes, they have the right to retaliate against a military action that was taking place by a group of people who consider themselves to be an independent country with an independent legal system, independent laws, and had a military that they presumably accept and voted for, or at least tolerated. And that military decided to take action against Israel, and Israel now is retaliating. And we don't like the results. We don't like the outcome of it. And I don't either, and none of us do. But it's the reality, and you're not going to talk Israel out of it. Supposedly, they were hit with some 5,000 missiles were launched from Hamas territory into Israel. Most of his missiles, I understand, were taken out by the Israeli defense systems, which is good. But some landed, and many, I think, at the time of October 7th, and actually thereafter, there were a couple hundred Israeli casualties and some deaths. And that caused, of course, the Israelis to have to retaliate and act their duty and their job to protect their population. So they did what they had to do, and that was to retaliate. The problem that we have here is that now the United States is forced to, by convention and by our political system, by the things that we believe, to support Israel, because we always have. We always stated that we will. And even though we want to say that we care about Palestinians and the Palestinian people, our main allegiance is to Israel. That might not always be that way. And I would like to see us have a little bit more flexibility in that. And be able to pivot away from what we may consider to be an overuse of the military in this situation, and ask Israel to pull back, or at least say, look, we're not going to support this. We're not going to send munitions and missiles and tanks to fight this war, because we think you've got it well under control, and it's overkill at this point. We don't want blood on our hands. We might be able to take that position. I don't think that's going to happen, but certainly it could very well happen the way political pressures are going now. And that leads us to what I consider to be one of the basic reasons why we support Israel. And that has to do primarily religious. We are a Christian country, primarily Protestant Christian country, evangelical Christian country. And we have been for many years. That may be changing now, but still the Catholics and the Protestant Christians from the evangelical wing of the Protestant party have a large part of the electorate. They control a lot of the electorate in this country. And they believe that Israel, the land of Israel, as it is currently constituted, is God's will. God wants his people, his chosen people, the Israelites, the Jewish people, the house of David, the house of Judah, tribe of Judah, to be in charge of the Holy Land, what we call the Holy Land of Palestine. There are many different interpretations of the Bible on that issue. My personal interpretation of that is that there's a difference between the state of Israel and the people of Israel coming back to their homeland. These are two separate ideas, and we tend to convolute them. We tend to bring them together. This return of Israelis to Palestine is considered to be an act of God or the will of God. I believe that God doesn't care so much about whether the Jews come back to Palestine at this time or not. What he cares about is that the Jews come back to their religious roots, come back to their religious homeland, which is the Torah, the Mosaic Law, and the way their religion was before they had to deal with this temple, the loss of this temple that they lost in 70 AD. He wants the Jewish people to come home back to their religious teachings and their religious commandments, which I believe some will say the Jews turned away from since the first century. And we can get all involved with Jesus being Messiah and all that stuff. And that's not a topic for this discussion. But my position on this is that the return of Jews to Israel is a signpost, an indicator of where we are in time, not necessarily the result of God's commandment. God wanted the Jewish people, the descendants of the tribe of Judah, Joseph and Benjamin, to take the Holy Land. He would give it to them. They would have it. It would be no problem. Don't even need to talk about it. It would be over. Okay, but that's not what's happening. There's something else going on here, and it's up to the Jews to figure out what that is. It's not up for us to tell them what they should be believing in, what they should be doing. We should preach the Gospels and preach our beliefs and let them know what we think. But they're going to make up their own minds as to what they think they need to do in this religious part of this situation we're in. But I don't think that Israel, the state of Israel, is necessarily a part of the religious state of Israel, the Jewish people. Zionism is not a religious movement. It's a political movement. It's made up primarily of Jewish people, and they do believe in a Jewish state. But it's not. They're not religious in the sense that they've been called non-Torah observant Jews by many religious Jews. They're not interested in the religion. In fact, many of the religious groups, the Orthodox groups that have seed in Israel is against the state of Israel. They believe the state of Israel is non-biblical, and it's against God's will, and it was the Jews were punished for their sins, whatever they were at the time of the first century, whatever they believed their sins were, and they were put into exile. And they have to be in exile until the return of the Messiah, whoever that Messiah will be, and he'll set everything right. And that's a position that, strangely enough, dovetails with Christian beliefs. It's just we might have different opinions as to who Messiah is and when that's going to happen, but basically we agree with that. So we must get that out of our minds. It's not a religious conflict. This is not Judaism versus Islam. There are some people that want to make it that, but it's not. Okay, and we have to be very careful here, not get drawn into this, not thinking that we're fighting for Jesus or fighting for the Bible. Or that's not what this is about. There's something more to this, and we have to really think about this before we make that decision. And like I said, there are many Jewish people that I know and I've seen already who are really against the way this war is being conducted by the Likud government in Israel, and they want a ceasefire. They want some kind of negotiated settlement to this, and they want to stop loss of life. The other side of the coin is we have to say honestly: do you trust Hamas? Do you trust the Arabs on the other side of the border there? to not use the ceasefire or a stand down to resupply and rearm and do the same thing again. We don't know that, and we can't tell Israel, oh, just stand down. We're 6,000 miles away, and it's easy for us to say, but I'm sure Netanyahu is looking at that and saying, no, we're not. We're going to clean this up now. We're not going to let this happen again. Now, that leads us to the next issue, which is what I call it to be geopolitical. Okay, and we're going to run into a time limit here, so I'll get through part of this and we'll take it on the third video, finish it on the third video. And the geopolitical argument here is that this is a military operation that was somehow orchestrated in secret between Mossad and maybe intelligence communities in America and Britain, in the West. And the idea was to get Hamas to bait Hamas to attack, in a sense. And there's just some people who believe that. I personally don't know what I believe right now, but it has been said that and has been demonstrated by some documentation on the internet, at least, that Netanyahu did call for the arming of Hamas and the funding of Hamas, with the idea at that time, I believe, was to sort of counter the PLO. The PLO was considered to be the strong military power at that time. He was afraid they were going to get out of control, so he used Hamas and that they would sort of counter one another, and there was probably arguments between both of them, and they didn't like each other, and so he thought that would keep them under control. That makes sense. I mean, it's a non-confrontational, smart way to handle a conflict. But it obviously did not work, and now Hamas has somehow gotten very powerful. And it happened right under the nose of one of the greatest military intelligence operations ever known to mankind, the Mossad. I find it hard to believe that really is the case. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying what I believe because I don't know. But it seems very strange. We always have these intelligence failures right at the most inopportune time. And we've had this happen to us in our country many times. The Kennedy assassination, the 9/11, Pearl Harbor, for example. We go down the line. There's a whole bunch of them. Iraq, the Iraqi invasion, weapons of mass destruction, and the current and the most recent one was the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. We've had intelligence failures all over the place, and these are supposed to be the brightest, the best, the most powerful intelligence organizations in the world. And they're making these kinds of mistakes, these kinds of ridiculous errors. Now, I'm not buying there's something else going on here, and I think it's fair to say that. It's fair to ask that question. We'll probably never get the answer, because as these things go, they control the media and the political system, educational system. It's been very hard for someone to actually get out there and make a case for what really happened. But we do ask those questions, and it's not helpful to call people names because they have questions, because they have concerns. And you see a lot of it going on there. People say to people, you're anti-Palestinian, you're anti-Jewish, or whatever your beliefs are, whatever your questions are. People, instead of trying to answer your questions, or at least try to respect your opinion, they call you a name. And that's part of the problem that we're having here. It's leading us down this path to perhaps maybe a much wider war, perhaps something even more terrible than we can imagine. So when we continue this part of the discussion on the other side, because we're running out of time, but there's a few more things we need to discuss. Be right back.